Here we are with Real Ass Cinema with Ethan Griggs, the blackest thing that's white. And on this episode, we're going to be discussing David Frankel's The Devil Wears Prada. And of course, the sequel has just came out last week. And so I haven't seen the sequel yet. So please don't spoil it for me. I will see it tomorrow. But I just recently rewatched the first one. As you can see, this is a triple feature DVD that I bought for 50 cents at a pawn shop. And mind you, I had only seen this one when I bought this. I never seen this one. First time I watched this one, I was the never no expectations. I had heard about the movie, of course, and watched it and was intrigued by it, but there were issues that I had with it. So I figured I'll watch it again before I go see the sequel. Because as y'all know, this is the year of Anne Hathaway. She's got 5 movies coming out this year. She already had 1 or 2 technically, because The Devil Wears Prada 2 is already out. But the first one was Mother Mary, which I've seen, and I already did a quick review on that. So be sure to check that one out. I had issues with the ending, but you know, I'm not gonna spoil the film for you. Like I said, I'll see The Devil Wears Prada 2 tomorrow, and I'll have a quickie review on that. So stay tuned for that one. And so, but just right off the bat, I mean, Anne Hathaway is a national treasure. I wholeheartedly believe that. Definitely one of the greatest actors of her generation. She's an actor that, very versatile, does a lot. She does kind of get painted into a corner sometimes as far as the films that she does. There's definitely stages in her career that, projected her to a certain image. Of course, the first one being the Princess Diaries. That's the film that basically made her a star and, kind of painted her in like, kind of a cutesy light. Of course, that's what happens when you do Disney movies and shit. And then right before, she would do other stuff like Ella Enchanted and stuff like that. But then right before she does The Devil Wears Prada, she does a movie called Havoc, which is I recently just seen that one and it is wildly mid. But the thing about Anne Hathaway, like no matter how shitty the movie is, like her performance is usually good. It's never really her fault if the movie is shitty or not. Some people might blame her for that, but I haven't seen her in a movie where it's like, well, her performance really just ruined the film. There's a lot of other mitigating factors to why certain movies are shitty. And I'm not going to dive too deep into Havoc, but Havoc was kind of a film that had her try to break away from that cute image that she had sustained with films like The Princess Diaries and Ella Enchanted. But then The Devil Wears Prada is kind of that second film that kind of projected her to um, a, adult films, so to speak, because she plays a character, Andy Sachs, who, she's just, fresh out of college. She's in New York and she's trying to be a serious journalist, but she lands a job at a Runway magazine, which is run by Miranda Priestley, played brilliantly by Meryl Streep. Now, mind you, I don't know the real story behind this. Never read the fucking book. Don't really care. I watched the movie, and I'm not the biggest Meryl Streep fan. She's probably got maybe 4 movies that I would say are really good. Like, this The Devil Wears Prada being one of them, because she's got this whole sexy Corilla Deville thing going on, and really love that. Because what's crazy about this movie, like I don't know shit about fashion, as you can tell from like all of the videos I've done. My whole place where I shop is like hand me downs are us type thing, and I don't know shit about this world, but what I do know is, and what I see, especially from Meryl Streep's character, Miranda Priestley, like somebody that takes pride in what they do. They're good at what they do, and they take it very seriously, because it's like there's a lot of layers to this film, a lot of stuff that is a lot of shit to say about society. And the beautiful thing about it is it doesn't overstate it. It doesn't become a movie that's like preaching to you in a way of like how you should feel a certain type of way about shit. It kind of lets you decide on your own how you should feel. The film also stars the lovely Emily Blunt, and she's kind of the first assistant. She's the one that's, she's worked herself. She really gives a fuck about the job. The cool thing about Anne Hathaway's character in the film, she doesn't give a fuck about any of this shit. She's just trying to get, her foot in the door so she can be a journalist and shit. And she says at the beginning of the film, I can do anything. I'm a fast learner. Whatever the fuck you need me to do, I can do. And she proves that, because the thing about it is, for as sensitive as the character is, she immediately says she's not going to take any shit, and that right there is what there's a few moments in this film, because Meryl Streep, she's playing this like ultra bitch, so to speak. But there's a few moments where like, we really see her respect this woman, and it's like, but she can't voice it. She's the boss, she can't show weakness or, simply any fucking thing like that, because she's got something to get done, and you can easily write it off as like none of this shit matters, who gives a fuck about fashion? There's a lot of motherfuckers that do, there's a goddamn $1 billion fucking industry, and they ain't saving lives, ain't doing nothing, but maybe they're enriching lives. This shit's important to somebody. Maybe not just somebody, to a lot of motherfuckers and shit. And and that scene with the belts, and Anne Hathaway laughs because they both look the same and all this shit. And the way Meryl Streep lays it down to her is like, whether you know it or not, all the shit that you wear is decided by the people in this room and shit. And it's something she takes it very seriously, and that's impressive. And like, well, that's one thing I can relate to, especially to specifically Anne Hathaway's character, is like she ain't give a fuck, but she's good at doing her job, whatever needs to be done. What I admire most is like about this film is like she was able to please the unpleasable. You had like millions of girls that would have killed to have that job, but they would have fell flat on their ass because they're, all hero worship, or they're all wrapped up in the fucking clothes or whatever the fuck. Whereas like Anne Hathaway wasn't like this. She was all about trying to get the fucking job done. And she did that shit through, at first she's like, just still trying to be herself. But then, she gets a kind of a makeover from the great Stanley Tucci. Like Stanley Tucci is absolutely amazing in this film. Like the gayest straight man I've ever seen in a movie. Fucking that one of the many actors that show you that bald is beautiful. Stanley Tucci, a fucking boss. Easily the funniest one in this fucking movie. Because Meryl Streep will throw some fucking funny lines, but if she comes off as being a bitch, it may be Stanley Tucci may come off a bit sassy and shit. But his fucking quips are just absolutely brilliant. And what's crazy too to me, we talk about Society, and this is back in 2006. This old movie's 20 years old now. 20 years later, we get a sequel we didn't even fucking ask for, but I hear it's good. People be talking it up. I'll find out tomorrow if it's good. But they keep calling like Anne Hathaway fat in the movie, and she eats carbs and all this shit, and girl is a size 6. That's far from being fat. That's just being healthy. That's what's fucking insane about that. She get like Emily Blunt in the film. She's starving herself just so she can, go to Paris and be able to fit in all the clothes and be a model and shit. It's like, fucking eat a damn sandwich. That shit is ridiculous. You can be just as sexy wearing plus size clothing, you know. But back in 2006, I guess that wasn't a thing. Like plus size clothing wasn't as fucking hot, you know, because hella, even a size 6 ain't even like Jesus Jones, you know, because Anne Hathaway, the skinny as fuck, and they're calling her fat. That shit is insane, you know. Don't be one of those damn bony ass models and shit, you know. It's something to hold on to, you know, something to grab. But it's just crazy, all that. And then you look at the character of Miranda Priestley, it was all based off of like real life shit, a bunch of shit I don't fucking know about. But what's crazy about it, and it is mentioned in the film when Anne Hathaway's in Paris and she's having dinner with that Simon Baker motherfucker, and he's like talking shit, and you know she defends Miranda, you know, because like if she was a man, nobody would think twice about her being an asshole. You know, if the man's being an asshole, she's powerful. You know, the woman being powerful, she's a fucking bitch or a sadist or whatever the fuck. And it's like it didn't matter, you know. And so the crazy thing is I don't necessarily see anything wrong with how like Meryl Streep did her thing. You know, that character specifically, you know, but the worst thing she does in this film is kind of throw Stanley Tucci under the bus just so she can keep her position, you know. But, you know, that's real gangster type shit. That's just the way his shit goes. It wasn't personal. Even he kind of took it personal because like, well, she gonna get me back for fucking me over, you know. It's just the way the game is played, type thing. You can't even really be mad at her for that. Like, who ain't ever done some fucked up shit just to keep that motherfucking job, you know? And that's the thing too. Like, what irks me the most about this movie is I see Anne Hathaway's character. She got her bitch ass boyfriend that she's with, played by that bitch ass dude from Entourage. And you know, he kind of a whiny ass bitch. And her friends, one of whom is Tracy Thoms, and it was a lovely Tracy Thoms, who's also in Death Proof. And the other dude, I forget what the fuck his name is, but I've seen him in something. I don't necessarily think it was Mad Men. It might have been, but he's in one of those fucking series like that. And at the beginning, they're like, oh, you know, you don't know shit about fashion. You can't fucking do this and all this shit. And, you know, they're like talking shit. And then when the bitch finally gets good at the job, then they're like, oh, well, you need to stop doing this job. It's killing your soul. You know, you're just not the same. And it's like, well, make up your motherfucking mind. Because I'd argue if her friends hadn't been giving her shit, you know, and they had a little rift with her boyfriend, and fuck that dude anyway. Because, yeah, sure, she missed his fucking birthday party. You know, she had work shit. She had to get it done. But she came in there with a damn little ass cupcake and a fucking birthday candle lit already. Walked the fuck in there ready to make up. And this motherfucker is going to be salty and skulk off to the bedroom and even blow out the motherfucking candle. I'm like, get the fuck over it. You know, you want to be supportive of your partner, whatever endeavor they do. Had the tables been turned and that motherfucker missed her birthday and he gonna come make, you know, it's just bullshit. You know, she should have left that dude right then and there. Like, yeah, sure, she may have fucked up, but she tried to make up for it and shit. And then, you know, of course, and that Simon Baker dude trying to hit it. Of course, you know, it kind of has the end already because he, you know, she kind of idolizes him and shit, and he helped her get that fucking Harry Potter manuscript and shit. But you know, it's just fucking, that shit just irks me. That's what irks me the most about the movie. The thing about it is very well acted, very well made movie. You really can't complain. But what irks me though is that bullshit like that, you know, because like you have mad respect for somebody that can do anything. You know, once you learn fast, you get it done, and you're rolling with it. You know, granted, this is probably not what she wanted to do for the rest of her life, but she probably fucking could. Hell, she probably could have been the next Miranda, or if anything, she probably could. Because the thing about it is too, like she had to go through the fucking ringer to do this, because like any other fucking journalist job was not going to be some fucking cakewalk. You know, it was just like she went through hell just so she could understand what the fuck she was going to have to do. You know, and in the end, she ended up getting it. You know, she breaks it off because she didn't want to be like Miranda, which is fine, but she gave up being a boss bitch for, you know, just because. And like I said, I think it was just mainly because her fucking friends and her dude kept fucking guilting her and, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, you need to be doing something else. Blah, blah, blah. Fucking lame ass shit. Just saying. Fucking bullshit. Anyways, you know, that's what baffles me is why the hell there's a fucking sequel. Like, I don't know the story behind it, but I'm like, the bitch quit the job. Why 20 years later she gonna go back to the damn shit? You know, I guess journalism shit wasn't working out for her or nothing, but I don't know. Like I said, I'll find out tomorrow when I go see the movie. You know, same director, and I don't know who the fuck wrote it, but it's got, what's crazy to me is 20 years later, these motherfuckers, they look like they aged today. Maybe that's just the magic of makeup and all this shit. And, you know, but like I said, very well acted. Probably, I might argue say Stanley Tucci is the best actor in this film. Definitely the funniest. Because like I said, all of his shit is just absolutely fucking gold. You know, that is one classy motherfucker right there. And of course, like, you know, Anne Hathaway is the cutest. So talking about, like I said, I don't know shit about fashion. She looked fine to me in the beginning of the movie, but then you get a little more stylish. She just kept looking hotter and hotter, you know. And what's crazy is, like, you know, they talked all that shit, you know, and they're fine with it when they getting free shit, you know, and you see your girl looking all fine and stuff. But then when it starts like, oh, we can't hang out anymore, you're always on your phone, you know, that's why is Stanley Tucci says that's the bitch of being good at your job. When you're good at your fucking job, then, you know, you have to be there all the fucking time, because then motherfuckers rely on you. Because when other motherfuckers aren't relied on, you can't rely on them, then what the hell else are you gonna do? You know, you're gonna go to the person you fucking rely on. And she made it to the point where, like, you know, there were a few moments in that movie where, like, the Miranda bitch was like clearly impressed, you know, and the whole reason she hired her, as she said in the film, was because you wasn't like the normal woman that I usually hire, as most of them usually fall flat on her ass, and she didn't. And she made a decision. She chose, threw that motherfucking phone in the water, and she left. You know, gave them clothes to the Emily Blunt, because that was very, you know, because she had to step over to get, and she ended up going to Paris. It was like, oh, all girl had to do was make sure she looked both ways before she crossed that motherfucking street. You know, she kind of let herself get walked over, because it's kind of a all about Eve type thing going on there, where like the bitch you don't expect to take your spot is the one that takes your spot, you know. And she worked on it, so didn't even eat for weeks. Shit, ass ended up in the motherfucking hospital and shit. So it's like, you gotta watch your ass on that front. But no, overall, definitely a film. Like I said, I didn't see it when it was big. I only saw the film maybe a few years ago, and it's probably the second time I watched it. Like I said, the first time I was so fucked off by the fucking ending and shit. You know, it's like, she could have been, you gave up being a boss bitch just because people were, because your friends and your bitch ass dude talking shit, and it's just ridiculous. You know, that the way society is, and it's crazy, ain't much fucking changed in 20 years. Because that whole thing about having your job be your identity, that's some fucking bullshit, man. Unless it's a career, you know, something that you genuinely love. Because it's the thing about the Miranda character. There's something that she genuinely loves. She was good at it. You know, she had, you know, she may have seemed like a bitch, but usually, motherfuckers in charge gonna come off like that. You know, some people say men don't find power very sexy. I find it incredibly sexy. That's the sexiest I've ever seen Meryl Streep in a fucking movie. Just the way she just that whole just disregard for anything. You ain't getting my shit done. I ain't fucking with you. By all means, continue to move at a glacial pace. You know how that just really moves me. It's fucking great. But there is that one moment where Anne Hathaway does see her as human. She's probably the only motherfucker that saw that woman as humans, which is going through that fucking divorce. And it's brief. It's so fucking brief because, as soon as she gets done venting what she needs to vent, she goes right back into business mode. And Anne Hathaway asks herself, well, what? I'm sorry, do we need to like cancel you? She's like, why the fuck would we do that? That's real shit. That's real boss shit right there. Because no matter what you're going through in your personal life, you still got to keep moving and handle your fucking business. That's shit that a lot of motherfuckers don't be talking about. Because everybody wants to whine. It's like Stanley Tucci told Anne Hathaway in the movie, all you're doing is whining. And she took initiative. She started to look the part. She began to act the part. She kind of understood, but she didn't take the shit seriously at first. She kind of understood, like this may seem like bullshit, but it matters to a lot of people. It's $1 billion industry for a fucking reason. Why motherfuckers go crazy for this shit? Why are they having big, like a whole week of this shit in motherfucking Paris and shit? Paris is a magical place. I've never fucking been, but it seems that way. Everybody tends to either fall in love or figure the shit out, and she definitely does. So she has that pivotal moment. She ends up getting a job too, because it's like when she gets she's in that job interview, and that dude says he had the facts. He said you're her biggest disappointment. It's not that she disappointed her because she was kind of grooming her to be the next her. And she just left, because I guarantee she never had, even that Emily bitch, she never had a fucking assistant like that. And even Emily at the end of the fucking movie, she looks over at the new chick. Is like, you got really big shoes to fill. You better watch the fuck out. And so it's just, there's a lot of beautiful moments in the film because there's it's like, that's where, in my opinion, what makes the film great is there's moments in that film where it's like you genuinely see these characters respect one another. They give each other shit. There's a lot of character development in the film, and that's what a film should be. You see a lot of change, motherfuckers going through shit, and it's just, there's something beautiful about that. To have that, it's funny. It's got a lot of fucked up moments in it. As far as like, the shit they put this bitch through. But that's how working a job is. It's called work. It's not called working the dream. It's called living the dream. And you can do anything. Any job is going to eat away at your soul. That's why like all these liberal motherfuckers go in for like that fucking socialism jive, because they don't want to actually like work and be consumed by money. But it's inevitable. Everybody ends up consumed by money because you need money to fucking live. This ain't some magical utopia fairyland and shit. And the fact, like, fuck them damn friends and fuck that bitch ass dude. She could have stayed fucking that damn Simon Baker motherfucker, but he was kind of a bitch too. The only real ones were the ones that she worked with at that magazine. And she realized that. But she also realized that if she kept on doing that, she would have became Miranda, and she didn't want that. And that's all well and good. But, you know, could have been a boss bitch, but she gave up being a boss bitch. So I don't know if I can go a full hour talking about this movie. So I may cut it short and just do 30 minutes of it because I don't want to just keep rambling. You know, you can go pick apart the movie scene by scene, but I think I've covered just about everything that I want to cover with this particular one, because like I said, the acting's phenomenal. The four actors: Anne Hathaway, Meryl Streep, Stanley Tucci, and Emily Blunt. They all return for the sequel, so I am excited about that because those four are what make this movie great, and their interactions. You get because Emily Blunt just absolutely stunning and just that full on. She had a full on British accent going on, and that's always sexy hearing British women talk. And of course, Meryl Streep, sexy Cruella Deville looking, and the national treasure that is Anne Hathaway. I mean, her like fashion, that fucking shit, and just to see that arc of that character and all the shit that they go through together, it is simply beautiful. Very well made. Even that opening credit sequence, that fucking Suddenly I See song and shit, it's very well made because it shows you the whole spectrum of like all the shit that women go through and just to look good for the day and shit. And it's a very well-rounded film, a lot better than you would expect it to be. And like I said, in my opinion, Meryl Streep's best performance. She's fucking cold-blooded, but that's where you gotta be when you're the boss, when you're in charge of making decisions and stuff. Everybody looking to you for these answers and stuff. And you gotta have competent motherfuckers. Ain't got time for excuses and shit like that. Like I said, if that was a man doing it, motherfuckers be praising him. But it's a woman doing it. She's a bitch. She's a sadist. Whatever the fuck. Motherfucking badass. You just got to get your shit done, motherfuckers. So, one thing I will be doing in the coming months, it's a little longer process, but I will have a series I'm going to have called The Good, The Bad, and The Mid. And I'm going to go through all of an actor's filmography, all the films they've done, try to see, are they really as good as society says they are. One episode in particular will be on Anne Hathaway, and I'll go live for that. But since she's got 5 movies coming out this year, 2 of which that are already out, just got 3 more. I think the last one, because of course Mother Mary and The Devil Wears Prada 2 is already out. There's also The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's new epic that comes out in July. And it's also The End of Oak Street, which looks like crazy fucking sci-fi shit from J.J. Abrams, and Verite, which comes out in October. So that particular episode will not air until October because I got to see all of those as well as all the other shit that she's done in the past. Definitely a wide-ranging, diverse filmography that, a lot of ups and downs. But that's the whole point of The Good, The Bad, and The Mid, is to see how good these actors really are. And I got a whole list of actors. So in the coming months, we'll see that. And of course, we'll go live every Thursday. If it's not at 2 p.m., it'll be sometime maybe later in the day. Who knows? It just depends on what the hell my schedule looks like. But currently, it'll be 2 p.m. I don't have any idea what next week's movie will be. That'll be a surprise. I'll post it next week sometime, but it should definitely be an interesting one. Whichever one tends to strike my fancy. But this has been another installment of Real Ass Cinema with Ethan Griggs, and know what else I could really say about The Devil Wears Prada that I've already said, because like some of the best acting that I've seen in a movie like this. Something that kind of gets, written off as like a fucking cutesy like chick movie. But it, like, real ass motherfuckers will understand that, like, this is real ass people dealing with real ass shit. So stay tuned for more. We got quickie reviews, got the 70s versus the 90s, and we got real ass cinema every week, every week. And of course, stay tuned for the upcoming series, The Good, the Bad, and the Mid. We'll go live with that one as well. Those, who knows how long that's going to, we have a running marathon with those motherfuckers. So y'all stay loose, and bald is beautiful.